Brookline are Joseph Dutton and Bruce Mello. Gwen Tenza is here in the office with myself. Shelby may be joining us shortly. First up is review changes to the agenda, if any. The only thing I want to note is Annie Guyon from the Humane Society will not be joining us, but Dot should be joining us once we get there. Gwen, are there any changes you want to make to the agenda?
Mm-mm.
Bruce, any changes you'd like to make to the agenda?
All set.
Okay. Joseph, any changes to the agenda? Okay. All right, then moving right along, scheduled members of the public. As I said, Annie Guyon will not be joining us. Archie Clark is here in the office with us. Dot Maggio should be joining us in Zoom shortly. So, and Mark is just walking in as well. Unscheduled members of the public, can whoever's got background noise, if you can, oh, is it you, Bruce? Unscheduled members of the public, there are none. There's no one here in the office unscheduled, and there's no one online that is not scheduled. That brings us up to number 5, approve the minutes from the June 3rd meeting. I will note that on both pages, I just have a number of spelling corrections of like impacted down under the COVID-19 survey, counted under the summary reports, unlicensed under Guy's report, other plans, Newfane, chloride was misspelled under Mark's report, not being available. And then one more misspelling of aggressively on other business on the second page. Just those things, nothing substantive. Gwen, did you have any changes to the agenda on either page? Okay. Bruce, were there any change, not the agenda, sorry, to the minutes. Bruce, were there any changes to the minutes other than the kinds of things I've noted?
No.
Okay. Joseph, how about you? Any changes to the minutes other than the spelling corrections I noted?
No.
Okay, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from June 3rd as amended. Is there a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Gwen. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the June 3rd meeting as amended signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, then the minutes are approved. We'll pause briefly just to note that, hi Shelby.
Hey.
There she is, Miss America.
Shelby is with us, and Dot Maggio is also now with us. Hi, Dot.
Hi, Dot.
Dot's muted, but that's okay.
Okay.
I'll make sure she's unmuted when we get to the next.
There I am. Hi, guys. I'm here.
Hi, Dot. So for Shelby and Dot's benefit, having just joined us, Joseph and Shelby and Bruce are all on the phone or online, along with Fact TV, who is streaming this like they're doing these days. In the office here are Gwen, Guy, myself, Archie, and Mark. Okay, so let's move on to the first item of new business, which is 6 Papoose Lane situation. Let's start by Dot. Do you want to give us just a brief recap of what has transpired with the dog situation in the last 10 days?
Sure. I had the assistance of the Vermont State Police, the local game warden, a veterinarian, 2 people from Wyndham Humane Society, Nancy Libby and myself, went last Saturday to 6 Papoose Lane and impounded 5 dogs that were tied outdoors because they were not licensed, and I had gotten a text message that said he wasn't going to license the dog. So based upon
Ooh.
our ordinance, we were able to do that. We did it with a veterinarian so that nobody could complain that the dogs were returned in worse shape. 2 of the dogs were released to the shelter, and Mr. Prue, the owner of the other 3 dogs, did, after about a week, um, uh, concede to signing up with the collection agency to pay his outstanding municipal ticket debts, and also paid the penalty and registration fees for the 3 dogs that he has. His bill was probably between $1,500 and $2,000 between that and the boarding costs for
Ooh.
businesses. So this is something that we did legally, and I was very pleased on how everybody worked together, and it went very, very smoothly. That's the 3 dogs that were, or the 5 dogs that were on the delinquent dog list. 2 of them will get moved to history. The other 3 dogs were licensed, and I can give you a report of the other dogs that are in town that are on the delinquent list if you want. Or
Hang on a second, Dot. So Guy is just weighing in that the Matt Cruz dogs have not actually been licensed yet?
No, I have not received any funds yet.
Oh, well, the funds would have been, you're going to get checked. There was an agreement that the Windham County Humane Society would take a credit card for the $201 owed for the 3 dogs when he went down there to pay his board fee to get the dogs out on Saturday. That was the understanding, that they were going to be writing you a check, Guy. Isn't that correct?
As of today, we have not received the check, and the dogs have not been licensed yet.
Ooh.
Well, well, you know what? That's news to me, because the dogs were not to be released until they paid the fee.
Well,
They
I'm gonna interject that it sounds to me as though the fee was paid to Windham County Humane Society. They just have not forwarded the fee to us.
I believe that must be the case, based upon the fact that he got his dogs back on Saturday afternoon. Guess you can tell, I can tell you how I know, because I could hear him. He got the dogs back on Saturday, and they're supposed to go down south on Thursday, but for training, but that's neither here nor there. They wouldn't have been released. That was the agreement with Annie. They would not have been released had they not paid for the license fees.
Okay.
Ooh.
So maybe, well, let's talk about this after, Guy. Maybe we can, and between us, we could reach out to the Humane Society just to find out where that money is.
Oh, I'll text her right away now that I'll text her as soon as we get off the phone here.
Well, and so, right. And so I guess that just means then, Guy, correct me if I'm wrong, that, so, I mean, at this point, that we have, the dogs still aren't licensed. They don't have tags because we haven't issued any of that yet, because we haven't been paid.
Checks in the mail.
Right, okay.
But I will not license them until I get paid.
Dot, let me just say thank you. I mean, a huge thanks to you and to Nancy and to Annie and the folks at the Humane Society and the Vermont State Police and Dave Taddy, the game warden, and all the people that were involved in doing this. It's unfortunate that it takes that many people to get somebody to hopefully eventually license their dogs. But thank you to you and all those people for helping make the best of that situation.
Okay. I'm going to, since I have you online, if you don't mind, I am going to run through the list of the delinquent dogs that we currently have and tell you where they sit, if that takes about 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes.
Sure, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That's cool.
Okay. Dog number 92 on the delinquent list, the phone number does not work. I'll have to go over to the house. The next two dogs number 118 and 119 from last year's list. The owners will be calling Mr. Tanza tomorrow to get them registered. Dog number 83 on the delinquent list will also be calling tomorrow to get them registered. Dogs 125 and 126 should be moved to history because they were relinquished to the Humane Society. I put down on the list dogs 5, 6, and 7. Those were the dogs that from 6 Papoose Lane. I'll have to put a question mark, but I thought that the paperwork should be in the mail to Guy, and he'll make it tomorrow. But that was for those 3 dogs. And then dog 111, she'll call Mr. Tanza to tell him to move the dog to history as the dog had to be put down. And dog 107. I've dealt with this loose dog before. I left a voicemail message, and if I told them in the voicemail that if the dogs are not licensed by the end of June, in July, I write municipal tickets and they have to go to court, which is what I've been doing. So
Atta girl.
get them going. All right, so I will check with Annie and email you, David, later on. But I'm sure the check is in the mail. You know, nonprofits have a little system when they issue checks and things of that sort and credit cards. And I'm sure the dogs would not have been released.
Yeah. Okay. Dot, do you mind hanging on for a bit for a further discussion about 6 Papoose Lane in general? Because I think I wanted to share that I believe in conversations with you and also with Annie, I was told, I mean, I have not spoken to Matt Prue, but I was told third hand that multiple people had mentioned that his landlord was pressuring him to find a new place to live.
Yeah, that's not my ball of wax that I'm getting involved in. That's
Yeah.
Right. No, I'm just saying that, okay, but I mean, were you not told that at any point in communication with him?
Yeah, Matt had said that he's looking for a place to move out of Brookline because his neighbors bother him.
Okay.
That's a text message. I mean, I only communicate with him in writing now,
Sure.
but he mentioned himself. He's looking to move out of Brookline because his neighbors harass him.
Okay. So I guess let's segue on then to the larger discussion of the residents. Joseph, I mean, I guess since you are the one who brought this up previously, has there been have you had further communication with residents or word of further issues in the last couple of weeks?
Nothing major that I've heard about. I do communicate with 3 of the residents that kind of live within earshot, and I think on Saturday everyone noticed that the dogs got taken away and there was no barking, and I think they were making some noise that night, and then everyone noticed it was nice and quiet until the dogs came back, and now they hear the barking again, but nothing major has happened.
I did get a complaint last night about the dogs barking, and I actually timed it. It was 45 minutes of barking. I could hear it at my house. So I texted the dog's owner, and he said that he was out lure training one of his dogs, but he would stop, and he did, and the dogs got quiet.
Well, that's positive. I mean,
Really?
relatively speaking.
Right. I think
Yeah,
that's
I mean, at least there's communication. That's a start.
right.
Yeah.
And he's always pretty polite with me. But because sometimes he gets very hot-headed, I only do it in writing. But we have long text messages back and forth. So, tomorrow will tell whether the dogs leave town. I don't know. He said that they were going to go down south to be retrained in bear hunting, and yeah. So.
I know. Speaking about the issue overall, probably the part that concerns me the most is the firearms use, and I know that's something that's quite intimidating to at least four of the households that I've communicated with, and what concerns me more than just the noise and the intimidation factor is the very real safety concern. I've heard that they kind of shoot every which way. They were like, at one point, a resident saw them standing on their porch and shooting at the pond, which would have a very real possibility of sending ricochets directly at the road.
Oh,
And
nice.
they a couple residents think that they were shooting towards their house sort of, and they heard what they thought was ricochets. And just from my interactions with these people, I don't think that they are well trained in firearms use, and there is a real danger, especially if they're shooting towards the road. That's a severely dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Has anyone reported this to the state police?
Again, with all these issues that we've spoken about in the last several weeks, I don't believe anyone called the state police during one of the events. So it's all been
Called after this. I mean, have you called the state police after they described it to you? Or?
Yeah, I've like I said, I've had a conversation with Lieutenant French, but nothing during or directly after an event. More an overview. And so and again, the positive is that in the last 2 weeks or so, nothing that severe has happened, so that is positive.
That is
But
Well, I'll interject here that on the 6th, June 6th, that evening, there were, I counted at least 18 rounds of rapid fire, gunfire that evening, and from the Papoose Lane. Yes.
yeah, that's I had heard that as well, is that after on that Saturday,
Yes,
they were
that's
up
Saturday.
they were up to some ruckus, and then things were kind of calm until the dogs returned. But for some reason, that just no one saw them shooting at the road or heard anything coming towards their house. But yeah.
So I guess, I mean, I'll start with you, Joseph, but then we'll go around quickly. I mean, at this point, do you have thoughts of something that we can do or should consider doing to try to help the situation any further, or what's your thinking at the moment?
I don't really have too many ideas. I do think it's important to have dialogue with the concerned neighbors, and then ourselves, and also if things continue, possibly some sort of dialogue between the select board and the perpetrators. But I'm not. I don't have any great ideas how to solve this.
Gwen, given what you know about it at the moment, do you have thoughts on something we could or should be doing that we're not?
I don't know even if a letter would help from the select board saying complaints have been made about firing arms, but that's probably just going to go on deaf ears. So I don't know. I have no idea.
I mean, I guess I'll ask about the firing situation. I mean, I'll freely admit I don't own a gun. I don't know I mean, is it illegal for someone
Yes,
to
it
be
is.
shooting?
Okay.
I mean,
actually-
I'll say I hear an awful
I
lot of
thought it
people
was-
in this
I
town
thought it
and
was
surrounding
illegal
towns shooting
to-
guns a lot. So.
I thought it was illegal so many yards from a house.
Yes.
Language that says
Oh,
that.
okay. No? Oh, this is
So-
the one.
Yeah.
I did do a little research about that because of the gunfire being associated with the dogs, and in Vermont, it's a very liberal and lenient state. The only thing is with the AR-15, if it was owned prior to 1986, then it's grandfathered. If somebody bought it after that, then it's illegal. And as far as protecting other people's houses, what they can do is register their property and post it as a safety zone. Every 200 feet, they put a sign on a tree, and this way neighbors couldn't shoot within 500 feet of the property line, but that's all that somebody can do.
I will just interject on the legality of the firearm. What you would be talking about would be a fully automatic weapon system, and I'm fairly sure that they do not have a fully automatic weapon system.
No, it's a semi-automatic, correct. You're right.
Yes, and so that would be it. Without further, inspecting their weapons, I wouldn't assume that they're breaking any laws simply by owning.
Right, right. Yeah.
Bruce, or sorry, Joseph, I didn't mean to cut you off. Although I guess we were kind of moving around for what thoughts there were. Bruce, do you have thoughts of something that we should be doing or consider doing to try to help the situation at the moment?
Well, I'm listening to what everybody had to say. And Dot and I know back when we wasn't quite the same situation as this, but we were talking about in terms of noise, not so much in physical violence, which is what you're pertaining to. And I was trying to sit here and think, what could make a change? And that's tough. So the only thing I'm thinking of is, you're going to love this, Joseph, is a noise ordinance, but it can't come, because then you'd have some kind of teeth and something that you could hold against them, but it can't come from the select board. We've been round and round about this. Dot will tell you, and I told you about this last time. We went, and it has to be organic. It has to come from the community. So you got to get a bunch of people that are sick and tired of all this, listening to gunshots in town, having people shoot any which way they want. And that's about the only thing that I can think of that you can get that would have some teeth. Other than that, the safety issue, it's all legalities. And I don't think we're in a position where we can actually make a law that, with respect to firearms, when there's already stuff on the books that are enforceable, but then you have to have the cooperation of the Vermont State Police, Sheriff's Department, and all them. So I don't know what to do. I mean, it's Wild City over there, I guess. I mean, Wild West is back, and I don't know how to resolve it other than what I just said.
Shelby, how about you? Any thoughts on something we should consider doing or could be doing?
I mean, I don't know. I think I don't envy the situation the neighbors are in. But I think unless they're going to call the state police when an incident occurs that could be classified as illegal or potentially illegal, there's really not much we can do. I mean, and the dog thing. So I think the dog thing's being played out as much as it can be. And if there's any incidences of escalation with the firearms that result in legal intervention by the police, that would be, I think, the only way that could be handled. And I mean, at the end of the day, we can't control if we have bad neighbors. And we can't make somebody leave just because we don't like them and we don't think they're good neighbors. And I'm not saying that it's as simple as that. I think there are some places, obviously, where they're crossing lines, but people need to report to the people that have the authority to do something about it when those lines are crossed. Otherwise, it just is what it is.
Okay, I mean, I'll weigh in from my standpoint that, other than continuing to have a dialogue with people as they have concerns and encouraging them to either report those concerns to law enforcement or reporting those concerns to law enforcement ourselves, and enforcing the rules that we do have, like Dot has been doing with the dog situation, and following all of the procedures that we have. I'm not sure that I see anything else at the moment that is obviously something that I think makes sense for us to do. Joseph, I'll circle back to you just for last thoughts, because then we do need to move on. Any last thoughts or any? I mean, I guess we all kind of hope that perhaps the show of force around the dog situation, maybe some of that helps keep the tenant a little bit more in line. But what are any last thoughts from you before we move on?
I guess it does seem like things could possibly be improving. Like I said, I do think dialogue is important, and the one thing that maybe we could do if stuff flared up again is maybe have some sort of communication directly between the select board and the tenants there. If it was just a letter, or we can't really demand them to come to a select board meeting or anything like that, but I think that it's possible that a letter from the select board could have some sort of positive effect on the
Think so.
situation. Maybe not. It could have a negative effect as well. But
Yeah,
I just,
I think it's possible it could have a negative effect, but
Start shooting off more.
we could,
Well,
let's at the moment things seem to be at least possibly moving in a better direction, or at least not moving in a worse direction. I guess I'd suggest we don't
I guess I'll
disrupt
just
that, but yes, maybe that's something that would make sense to do at a certain point.
Yeah, I'll just say the one thing that scares me is that when we talk about calling the state police, especially in terms of the firearms use, we all know that the state police, even if they were to try to get here as fast as they could, they're at least half an hour away, and so whether it's a stray bullet or whether it's them getting all riled up one night and actually trying to hurt one of their neighbors, the damage easily could be done well before the state police could ever respond, and that's why I think that we need to at least think about it, because even if all the neighbors call the state police at once, it only takes less than a second to end somebody's life with
Yeah.
the misuse or the purposeful use of a firearm, and that's what frightens me. And I will say that I've heard that exact sentiment from several of the neighbors, and that's why I think it's important to talk about, just in the idea of representing the residents of the town.
Yep, that's a fair point.
If I may interject, this
Yes.
might be something that the landlord should talk to his tenant about, the shooting of guns on the property. If wouldn't that be the the owner of the property, the taxpayer? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I think some, like I say, what I have heard third hand leads me to believe that the landlord is possibly taking a more active role in that property situation, which
Well, he has to. I've talked to him before.
hopefully also helps.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dot, what was that?
I've talked to him in the past, the landlord. He was always very nice to me. And I think Mr. Tanzet got him to come up again. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's only so much we can do. We hope it gets better, like you said.
Amen.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks everybody for that. Thank you, Dot, for joining and going through all that, and for all your hard work.
Okay, guys, I'm going to sign off. Have a great meeting.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah.
right, bye-bye.
Okay, next up is 6B road projects. So like I mentioned before, both Mark and Archie are here in the office. And I think the idea, as I recall it from when we talked about this last time, was basically just to start to go through some of the road projects that maybe we had on our agenda or are now are on our agenda, see what our comfort level is as far as spending money on those or what we might possibly prioritize, what can wait, things like that. So I guess I'd maybe open it up first to Archie and Mark to maybe sort of start with your priority list of projects that are hanging out there.
Mark and I rode around was it Monday night? Yeah. And came up with a list of many of these projects. Some are new, some are old, some are. But anyway, Mark can go over the list. I guess the first one is paving on Hill Road. We talked about this last year and got late in the season. We tabled it. We talked about it in March, and then the COVID hit and it happened. Now we're moving into a new fiscal year, of course, in a few weeks. I guess my personal concern is, we're moving into the third year of no paving, and I felt like a few years ago we were really starting to get some momentum going toward our paving in town. I think we're a lot better off than a lot of towns around in that respect. But when I drive through the pothole at the end of Howard Osgood's driveway, I kind of think I guess I'm thinking we're kind of heading the wrong way if we don't get something going here. That's just my personal opinion. I'll let Mark.
Well, yeah, that was number one on the list, to figure out whether to pursue paving for this fiscal year coming or to wait.
I guess I'd say, sorry to interrupt, but my suggestion would be that we somewhat discuss each of these individually as we go through them.
Okay.
Rather than going through the whole list and then fighting back. Does that make sense? I mean, you guys have already prioritized things, so let's talk about the highest priority things and make sure we get some feedback on that. I guess let's just give everybody a chance to weigh in specific. So we've obviously, like Archie said, we talked about paving Hill Road last year. It got too late. I think we were all prepared to put it out to bid in the spring, but then COVID hit and we had concerns about what that might do for all kinds of reasons. Some of those concerns have probably relaxed, but possibly not all of those concerns. And we're now about to be the beginning of July. I'll weigh in first and say my personal view is I do think we should do the paving on Hill Road, but I think we should wait until next year to do it.
No.
But let's go around and let everybody else weigh in on it. Gwen, what's your feeling about the Hill Road paving situation? Okay, and that's fine. I mean, sorry. I mean, we don't have to have answers to all
Too late
these.
to pave this year?
Presumably not. I mean, I guess it does remain to be seen whether we could get somebody whether we could get a bid out, get an RFP out, get bids in, get somebody to agree to do this yet this year. But we can certainly try. There's no reason we couldn't try.
Is that for the complete project, reducing the hill and so forth?
Well, I'll say that the reduction of the hill is something that we've never discussed fully, and that would be a whole nother topic of discussion. But I guess I would suggest for the moment, let's take a temperature from everybody on how they feel about just entertaining doing the paving on Hill Road this calendar year still.
Did they get financials to say that we've got the money with this
Financing
COVID
or
situation?
Yeah, I don't think there's any concern that I've heard that we don't have the money to be able to do it currently. Joseph, what's your feeling on paving Hill Road this year?
Well, there's really two main questions that I have. One about the financials, which I assume we're going to get an update from Guy a little bit later on. Assuming that all looks good, I'm also curious if the price of oil has still remained low and is affecting the paving in our benefit. And if that's the case, I would say that it might be in our best interest to get it paved this year, because that is a pretty big factor in the cost of paving, and who knows what's going to happen with that over the course of the next 12 months.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to go any lower.
Mhm. Okay. Shelby, what's your feeling about the Hill Road paving situation?
Yeah, I mean, if we have the money for it, I don't see why not. I think what we've learned from this experience so far with COVID is that we really don't know what the economy is going to look like, and what's going to happen moving forward, if we're going to get hit again. But it seems like we're in an okay spot right now, and the summer might be the best time to get things done before flu season hits, and there's potentially other impacts to the economy in the fall. So as long as the money's here now, I don't really see why we couldn't get it done. And we also just don't know what next year is going to look like if we get hit again, and if they're actually in this next wave or something, are more economic repercussions for us, like not being able to collect taxes. So if the money's there, I would almost say go for it.
Okay. Bruce, what's your feeling?
I'm with Archie. I wanted to do this last year or the year before, and I'm with Archie. Archie is right. We made a huge amount of gains, a lot of it thanks to him, on getting these, and Mark, and getting these roads to where we're pretty damn lucky to have them in the condition that we're having them. And let's put the key. Let's do it now. I just got an email from Sandra yesterday. Of course, we don't know how this affects paving oil, but they're running a special right now, $147.9 for heating oil, and I don't know what paving money's like, but I know what we did last year and the year before is we said because the prices were really, really high. I say try. I say get it. We had an RFP, didn't we have an RFP, Dave, already made up? And no,
We never.
Let's make one up. Let's do it. Let's get some action. Let's let it rip. I'm in favor of doing it this year if we can. I think the iron's hot, and I think we should jump right on it. As to what Joseph, and Shelby is saying about the price, and if the price is going to change next year. I mean, is it going to get much lower than this? I doubt it. So now's the time. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but if it's what we think it is, I think we should take advantage of it, and we can find that out by putting out the RFP.
Okay. And that's fine. I mean, I don't have a problem with us putting together an RFP and putting it out and seeing what we get. I will just mention just a logistical thing, which is obviously we're not voting on an RFP tonight, which means
right.
The earliest we're going to vote on an RFP is going to be July 1st.
That's fine.
So that means we could vote on it July 1st. We can get it published for the 4th.
Yep.
Have it due, I don't know, how long would we give people? I mean, we'd either have to have it ready, we'd either have to give them less than 2 weeks for it to be the 15th, and is that reasonable?
Well, yeah,
So we'd have it, we'd open bids on the 15th of July?
they're just gonna bid it by the ton anyway.
Yeah, okay,
It's not a big,
okay. Okay, so I guess
Sounds like a plan.
it sounds like consensus that let's at least get the RFP together and put it out, and hopefully we get responses that'll work for us and we can move forward with doing it.
Good.
All right.
Is that for Hill Road from the Osgood side? Remember there was another part of the Hill Road by Rogers, Jim Rogers? Is that
Yeah,
also
it's-
part of it?
Yes, that too. That little
Hang on.
short from Sunny Lane to Grassy Brook.
Right. Yeah, Sunny Lane driveway to Grassy Brook was one section, and then from Howard Osgood, West River Lodge,
Yep,
section of Grassy Brook Road.
yep.
So that's what you shoot for this year?
Yeah,
And at that point, we're all caught up. I don't know if anything else, unless Archie or Mark can tell us if there's anything else we have to worry about at this point.
So as not to completely derail the rest of our discussion with this, I'm going to suggest that for the July 1st meeting, that we sketch out, and I think some of this we had already, and we can firm it up, that we have essentially an RFP for grinding, right? We were gonna have one RFP for grinding, we were gonna have one RFP for paving, and then we were gonna have a third RFP, which we will definitely have to discuss, for the removal of the material and the lowering of that hump, which we have not discussed or agreed with
well,
necessarily.
would it be a good for that discussion before the RFP? It seems like if the select board isn't in agreement to even do it, I mean, I don't think you've got.
We can do that. I don't want to, we're also not, we're gonna only get through part of the list, and that's fine.
Oh,
And we can do that. So let's have the discussion now about the hump on Hill Road. So do you guys want to refresh our memories on exactly what's being suggested, if it's still being suggested? If you guys still think that's a good idea.
well, there is some safety concerns, and I think lowering the hump would improve sight distance from Cynthia's driveway. Exit. Mark and I had it back in March, was it? Yeah, I think it was March. And I think we both kind of, after I set up my transit and we really looked at what it would do. I think we both came away saying it's not going to do quite as much as I had hoped, but it definitely would be improvement. Whether it's worth it or not, I don't know. But
And refresh my memory on what we were guessing the additional cost might be to remove that. I
didn't bring that.
I know that we had some.
We had like 175 feet of questionable pipe that we wanted to take out. And, as far as the number went to that, there was quite a few factors of cleaning up road edges and removing gravel.
Mhm.
And
I feel like it was between 10 and 20 maybe, or something like that. I'm guessing at the moment.
Yeah.
And again, it was
Didn't Archie, didn't you give a kind of a pre-bid on what you thought it was?
which, you know, is another factor. If you, in other words, if you totally grind it down to nothing, you know, you got to put base gravel back, and base blacktop,
Uh,
as opposed to just milling the surface and putting a layer of blacktop in.
So there'd be some paving, some additional paving costs
Right.
also.
You gotta pave it anyway, but you don't
Right.
have to put base
You
down.
don't have to do it quite the same. Yeah, okay. Let's just do a quick round on I'll say that I do not think it makes sense to do the removal of the material on that hump portion of Hill Road. I've looked at it quite a bit. I don't actually think it necessarily helps the situation, and I think there's a possibility it could make the situation worse
What
from
I
a
re-
speeding standpoint.
What I
Um,
remember when we went there, I know we're further up this, is I thought it was a consensus that for the amount of money, it wasn't worth it.
Right,
And
although
it's gonna make people speed even more.
I'll say it has changed somewhat, both
Yeah.
it's less expensive, we think, potentially to do
Right.
it, and the severity of the change
Right.
is different than what we had discussed a couple of years ago or whatever. Joseph, do you have a quick feeling on whether it's worth entertaining removing that material or not?
I guess I would say I don't really think it's worth any large amount of money. One thing that could possibly make it worthwhile is if excavating some of that material, some of it could be used up the road on the same project. I think maybe I discussed that with Mark at one point. We talked about the possibility of needing to raise the road a little by Howard's up there, and if removing the material down by Cynthia's would make it a little bit better there at the same time as using that same material to make it better, make the road better up at Howard's, then it could be a benefit. But I don't really think that that just for the sake of removing it, it warrants spending so much money on it.
Shelby, what's your feeling, if you have one, on this?
Yeah, I think I'm firmly still in the, I don't really know that I think it would be that helpful. And based on not being confident would be helpful, I definitely don't think we should be spending money on it. So I'm happy to just kind of, if everyone else is on the same page at the end of this conversation, remove that from even considering putting it in the bid and just do a bid for regular paving and not that removal of the hump.
Okay. Bruce, what's your feeling?
Oh, I've been back and forth on this issue for quite some time. And I've been driving up that road for a better part of 45 years. And I was down there when we had the meeting down there, and we looked at it, and I've looked at it alone. My wife and I have talked about it, and this is where I'm at with it. I think spending $20,000 on it is not a good idea. Okay, let's take that off the saying that. I think, Art, you said something like $10,000 or $11,000. I remember maybe something like that. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. That you thought you could do it for. Maybe it could be reconsidered in that respect. I would consider it in those numbers, but not $20,000. And I agree with David in one respect. We have to be sure, or really close to sure, that this isn't going to enhance the speeding there. One, and two, we want to be sure that it's going to improve the situation. We're going to all this expense, even if it is 10 grand or 11 grand. We're going to all this expense to possibly not gain anything. I certainly don't want to do that. So I think Shelby's kind of right. Let's put the bid out for the paving. Let's get that going first. And then after that, we can discuss this. And if we want to move forward, and Archie, you want to come over and meet about it, and we're going to all talk about it and revisit it. You said 175 feet, Mark. I don't know where that starts and where that stops, but I have a pretty good idea, I think. But I would be open to considering it, but I'm not open to spending $20,000. That's it.
Okay, I'm gonna, and I guess people tell me if I'm misrepresenting anything, but I think our consensus is that we should not consider doing that, that we should focus on the paving, the RFPs for grinding and paving, and not worry about putting together and putting out an RFP for material.
I would have one question, like I was saying about the possibility of needing to raise the road. Is that still something that we feel like we need to do? Does the road need to be raised up by Howard's?
I feel by Howard's, we should.
Howard's? No.
To bring it up so that drainage goes off the road. By bringing it up. Now, where it puddles right at Howard's, between Howard's two driveways. And so if we were to build the road up 6 inches, it would make a huge difference through there.
What would be the approximate cost on doing that?
Good question.
You know how many loads it might take or might not take, or
I'd rather use
just a ballpark figure would be good.
Yeah, I think it's in around 1,000 maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Could be.
You said 1,000, Archie? I can't hear you.
Give or take.
Sorry.
Well, that's not that bad.
Um,
I'm all in favor of permanency. Is
Hang on, Bruce.
permanent.
It's easier just to do it.
Sorry, I'm out of turn.
What did Brian say? I don't remember.
Well, we were gonna look at it as an entire line from the intersection up to West River Lodge, last paving that's started and stopped. And so I felt like once that was ground and reshaped and compacted, that then we could tell how much to rise up there. As far as cost goes, I don't know if gravel would be the right answer under the fresh paving, or if we could use grindings
Yeah,
salvaged anywhere to build that up and then pave.
But in any event, is it fair to say that that doing the removal of the removal of the other paved material merely for the purpose of being able to use that material elsewhere would not be a cost-effective thing to do? Right.
that's correct.
Right. I mean, if we
Okay.
paid more to do that, then it would cost us by far to just get material to fill where we need to fill. Does that
That answers my question.
assuage your concerns, Joseph, or whatever? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I think we're all on board as far as putting together RFPs for paving and grinding for Hill Road. What's next on your list?
Okay. Some of these run together for
Mhm.
jobs. It's just a list of work that I would like to
Needs to be done.
do list. And then the next priority I feel throughout town is tree removal. Putting out to bid tree removal. Right around, you see many dead trees have come about since the last tree removal. So, tree removal can be expensive. The ones that I have talked with the Green Mountain Power about trees that they'll remove that benefit us and them. And then there's trees I can get on my own that aren't near power lines, but the trees I'm talking about, getting an okay to put out a bid on would be for some projects as well as traffic safety. Trees that are in danger of falling on our roads. So basically, I would just ask the select board for permission to pursue tree removal. And I believe that we can fit it into the budget as a contract service
Mhm.
and not ask for extra money. I believe it's something that should be done regularly, and knowing what our budget is, I think there's room for a certain amount of trees a year
Mhm.
to be removed.
So a couple of years ago, was it a couple of years ago that
Yes.
we hired Carr to do that? And my recollection is it's like maybe $8,000, something in that range. And they, whatever, a couple of days, 3 days, however much it was, that they basically went around and
Right.
did all of
I
that.
had flagged the trees that
Right.
wanted removed.
Do you, I mean, I know it's hard to guess, but is your guess that this is a similar type of project
Yeah,
to
I'm
that?
guessing it's around the same number of trees.
Uh-huh.
You know, some of them worse off than others. There's a row of the trees I talked about at one of our last previous meetings that would like to get those removed for a better drainage project
Mhm.
on Hill Road. That's something that, that particular area is like a priority, I feel.
Mhm.
If we could get, that's about 20 hemlock trees in one area. The rest of them are more or less like a dead, standing, or dying situation. But the other ones are, they're all safety issue.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, a lot of the dead elms are shading over the road.
Would that come
Go ahead.
under the Better Roads grant? Would that project be part of the Better Roads grant for the drainage?
It's not, and it's not only because the drainage doesn't go into a major stream,
Oh, okay.
brook, or river. You have to be within so many feet of the body of water for that. So it's kind of on our own.
Let's just do a quick whip around on this one. I mean, I'll say that I think this is an important thing for us to do and continue to do. I think we've talked about over the last several years when we have when windstorms come through and other things come through. Part of the reason I think that we are usually less impacted than other towns is because Mark and Archie and everybody have been good about proactively taking down dead trees, so we have less things that end up being a problem. I'm comfortable with us putting out to bid to get bids on something that's in a $5,000 to $10,000 range for tree removal around town. Gwen, what's your feeling? Is that something that you're?
Safety is utmost.
Yeah. Joseph, what's your impression of that kind of project?
I agree 100%. This is one of the more important things that we need to be focusing on.
Bruce, how about you?
This dovetails into what we're doing with the paving and keeping everything up to snuff. Yeah, it's good stuff. I do have a quick question for Mark. Mark, how's the ash situation in town?
We're fortunate in Brookline. We do have a good amount of ash, but nowhere near what other towns have. And, in my daily travels, I see the ones that are apparently dying, and I haven't cut in or personally seen the ash borer actively through Brookline, but I've heard that it's all around us.
Uh-huh.
I think just as I monitor the road, I'm constantly looking at the trees, and the foresters are in search of it on a daily basis around here, and the meetings that keep us informed on the ash. So some of the trees that I have marked are ash, and some of them appear to be perfectly healthy. But it's not going to affect 100%, but a great chance that the majority will eventually be caught with the ash borer.
Okay. Thank you.
Shelby, what's your feeling about this project?
Yeah, I think it sounds good. I don't think it's something that putting off or that putting it off would do us any good in the long run. I think that we have puts a lot of us at risk of a lot of property damage and or people being hurt. So I think it makes sense to keep working on it. And it sounds like it's something we do it regularly as like a maintenance thing.
It happens regularly, yes, just
Yeah.
because it's a life cycle of trees growing,
Yeah.
dying, damages,
Yeah.
and weather related. So, and as far as the number goes, we can adjust that number to, whatever number the board feels is the right number, but that's comparing to what Dave said, the last time we had a major overhaul was somewhere in the 7,000 to 8,000 range. Or around that was, if I recall, it was near 100 trees.
It's a lot of trees.
When I say trees, some of them were, 4 inches to 24 inches.
You can come to my house next.
Yeah.
You can bring them to mine.
Okay,
Those
let's
are
get
hardwood.
one more item on your list, and then we'll continue it next time.
And this is the general maintenance thing, and we were holding back. I know that we plan each year to do a certain amount of culverts, but I have several culverts in need of replacement, and which it's all part of the budget.
Yeah.
So I just more or less looking for permission to pursue the replacement of several culverts that are failing for this summer with a rented machine. We do have our option to use a rented machine with myself as the operator, or we could lump them put them out to bid. But basically, we do need to address the culverts and cleaning of other culverts, ditches, and runouts constantly fill in with silt. So this all needs to be taking place. Just need more or less the board's permission to pursue all that.
Do you have the time to do this?
Oh,
For
yeah.
you to operate and do the,
I make the time with my budget for the roads to do
Okay.
this, yes.
Yeah,
One of the culverts, and I agree, I would rather see you do the work, because when we did put that culvert out to bid, we wound up with a bit of a dip in it and so forth, and I don't know what happened there, but I think you know what's going on more. And the other question was, are you thinking about replacing a culvert by Jim Rogers there, by the Nystrom property, before we pave Hill Road?
Let me see.
Remember there was that one culvert there that seemed to be
By Sunday Lane,
by Nystrom's property going up Sunny Lane.
A real long culvert? was it?
Yeah, it goes across the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah, I think we've looked at that one and decided that if the paved area.
Yeah,
we'll-
yeah, that-
we'll
okay.
Pursue that. I do have a list. I didn't bring it with me, but yeah, if that needs replacing, that would be
before
on
we
the
pave.
priority list.
let's just quickly go. I mean, I'm in agreement that this is also something that's important, and that we should, we have budgeted and we're in things look good at the moment. We should move forward with doing them and not skip a summer of culvert
absolutely.
maintenance. Gwen's in agreement. Joseph, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I believe that it's certainly a necessary task.
Yep. Bruce, how do you feel?
Yep, I agree with everybody, yes.
Shelby?
Same.
Okay.
And
All right.
So Mark has some prices, I don't know if you want to hear them, for the rentals.
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, I called around to a few different companies. Some of them didn't have the machine size we were looking for, so I wrote down the ones that were compatible. Some of these excavators are on tracks, a traditional excavator, and then the one is the wheel excavator that we've all talked about for so long. Okay, I've got price ranges from $37.50 a month to $6,000 a month. I mean, I can break them all down, but that's the price range. There's a $2,000 difference monthly. Weekly goes from $12.50 a week rental to $2,500 a week rental.
What's your guess as far as if you do the culverts that you're sort of thinking you need to do? How long would we need to rent the thing?
Well, if you don't run into
Yes.
ledge or any major unexpected,
Mhm.
you should be able to do a culvert a day, pretty easy. You know, removal and compact back in the new culvert. So I would say in a week's time, I could probably do 6.
Ooh, you're cranking.
You know, we have several, and so
Right.
I'm feeling like 1 week would be probably close, but it may take a little bit more.
And presumably, do these have? Yeah, I mean, maybe you plan for the idea that it could be 2 weeks. And
Yeah, well.
are there
the
other
thing of it
things
is
that you
once-
potentially could do with this equipment?
Oh, for sure.
that's
Yeah, once
Other
the
places
machine
on your
is-
list?
Once the machine is there on the job site, and you're concentrating on the culvert, but then you need to make sure the drainage is gonna get to it on each end.
Right.
And so from culvert to culvert, there's always cleaning, you know, ditch material removal so there's lots of extra, the thing wouldn't sit around if.
Is there a big difference from the 2 weeks to the 1 month? I guess what I'm getting at is that when you had it from that one time, you accomplished a great deal.
Right,
We saved a lot of money and it was worth its weight in gold.
right, yes, you know, $6,000 a week for the
Ooh.
ideal machine.
For the month.
For the month,
Yeah.
yeah. I
In
feel
2
that
weeks.
that's higher than the rest, but the other ones are on track, so we have to like trailer it from site to site, whereas the one on wheels you can drive.
Yep.
So you're
Which is
paying a
good
little
because
bit
you're-
more, but you're getting more,
You'll get more accomplished.
right? As far as you know, I think in one solid month I could accomplish a major amount of even the other list of work that I have saved on. projects
Cleaning out
list.
ditches and stuff.
I guess the other thing I'd ask, and so this is, am I correct that wheeled excavator is also the kind of machine that we've talked about? And, getting back to Joseph and you guys thinking at some point had been maybe it would make sense to get this for a purpose, and maybe this is that purpose so that we have some experience with it and can see all of the things and document all the things it can do, so we're more educated about it, informed about it.
We'd be multitasking there, yeah. And yeah, I mean, there would be times that I wouldn't be available on certain days because of my other job opportunities that I attend to, but even still, knowing the machine is here and ready, and when I came to town and worked, I still believe that it would give a lot of benefit for what it's capable of. I did inquire on and added more just for future reference, and for rental, they add $1,000 for a full month of on top of the 6 for a mower. So if you were mowing for a whole month, it would be like $7,000. But again, we would have no use for mowing for 4 weeks in a row. More or less a 1 week would be all the.
I've noticed when we were driving around, I noticed some of that wild parsnip.
Yeah.
I haven't noticed any around here, but I noticed that going up like Route 30. I went, oh no, there's some of that
Oh,
stuff.
The knotweed in 2 weeks' time grows 5 feet.
And the other, that
And the other
wild,
stuff
yeah,
is right
I
behind it.
noticed it was starting.
And, you know, and this year we rented the over-the-rail mowers, so we're all set for mowing, and July 6th to July 10th, we'll try to knock down all that invasive to beat the reseeding of the mature
Okay.
plant.
Let's just do a quick, and we'll end with this, but so on the idea of potentially getting the wheeled excavator for a month in order to do the culvert stuff as well as other things, I think it makes sense to do that. Gwen, what's your feeling?
Well, I think it makes sense that way. Mark has less pressure knowing that it's here for any time he needs it. And maybe he's going to be able to get more done because he knows he doesn't have to rush this or rush that to get over here. So I think it's a good idea.
Joseph, what's your thinking?
I think that we've discussed this pretty in depth, and I don't think we should be spending money like crazy right now, but I think this is actually something that would save us money. So I think that it's a good idea to go with it. Bruce,
how do you feel?
I think that it's a good opportunity, and especially knowing how Mark works, and I think it'd be really a great advantage for him to be able to, get things done he might not even be thinking of right now, other than the culverts. So yeah, I'm totally in favor of it.
Shelby, how about you?
Yeah, same. I think it falls in the same vein as everything else we've talked about that we've been okay with tonight. I think it needs to happen, and I think that we could get a lot out of that month with the machine, and it'll end up being a good move.
Right. Okay, cool. Awesome.
You,
Okay, any last thoughts? I guess
I mean, there are other options. We could do a 2 week, but we're only $1,000 less if we do a 2 week.
Yeah, see, that's where I think, to Guy's point, that, yeah, I think at that point, I trust that you're going to be able to find other things that you can do with it.
Days, you'd still be doing it.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you were to hire somebody.
Right.
you're gonna pay
Right.
way more than
Well,
Maybe Bruce can cut some grasses.
There you go. Okay.
not happening.
Let's wrap that up for road projects at the moment. But I guess I would say after we talk about the RFPs and stuff at the next meeting, let's hit the rest of your list. If that works for you guys.
Sure.
Cool. All right. Any last thoughts before I cut you off?
Anything on here?
A lot of the things on the list.
Well, right, exactly, and that's it.
A lot of it's
Right,
just little,
right. So yeah,
yeah.
that's ideal. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you both very, very much for
Thank
that,
you,
and thanks for
Archie.
coming. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I do, right, yeah.
All right, let's move along to old business, and first up is the 7A, the tax collection update. Mr. Tanza, do you want to just give us
Okay.
where
quick,
things are at?
Quick review. We started at over $40,000 about 2 weeks ago. We're down to 17.5, and we're moving in the right direction. As I said earlier, I think the town financially is in fairly good shape because we're about where we normally would be if we didn't have the virus. The few bigger amounts due are people that I'm contacting again, and I think they'll come through. And then we have the standard regular people who, for whatever reason, are always late, needs 4 or 5 warnings and so forth. But I think we're in good shape. The state hasn't set the tax rate for next year yet. We're still waiting to hear from the state. So that's another issue. But I think we're okay. And I think getting the work done for the town is important because we have in a budget of $39,000 to do that. And that would certainly be advantageous. And now is the time to get it done while you have weather and everything in your favor. So speaking as assistant treasurer, I think we're in good shape. Samara's going to review some things with Sarah in the next couple of days, and I think she may have a report for you for the next meeting.
Okay. Any questions from any of the board members specifically about the tax collection situation for Guy?
No.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Thanks, Guy. All right, moving on to Susie's Little Peanuts updates. Bruce.
Hello. First thing, Mark, I'm gonna need your assistance. Remember how we talked about changing the bulbs in the rooms last year? I got an email from Jess Hyman that they wanted to do what you were talking about last year. So I need to coordinate that with you, okay? When it's not a rush or emergency, but in as much as you're doing nothing, right?
You can call me anytime, my cell phone there, and also need to talk about getting the supplies to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably get the bulbs for you, but you and I need. When are you in town? So we can talk face to face about it rather than taking up a lot of time with everybody else.
I'll be in town tomorrow.
Okay, in the morning.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm going over there to talk to somebody else about something else. So when do you want to be there? Or you want to call me in the morning?
Sure, yeah, I'll call you first
What?
tomorrow.
Yeah, make it like after 9. I'll get killed.
After day's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, now I'll move on a little bit here. You and I, Dave, still have to work out this thing about the wood chips, but nobody said anything. So I don't know about you, but I've been out straight, believe it or not. But I'm still not caught up, but I'm doing a lot, and so I'm not in a rush to do much of anything. But anyway, I'll move forward
when we need to.
What's that, Dave?
Yeah, we can figure it out whenever.
Yeah. Okay. Now, a week ago Saturday, I got a phone call from Norm Holden. And he said he's ready to go. And I said, all right, he's ready to go. He said, I want to come over and take a couple of windows out and get started on them. All right. So I let him in the building. He took the windows out. The top one is fixed. The bottom one is movable. Took them out. That was a Saturday. I got a phone call Monday. Oh, there's too much work on the inside of these windows. I'm going to need another $100 a window. I say, what? Well, wait a minute. You agreed to paint the windows. I looked at the bid. And we went back and forth and back and forth. And I said, well, maybe okay. And then I got off the phone and said, not so fast. So I called him up and we had a meeting. I went over and looked at the windows. And he was telling me how he's not making any money on the windows and it was harder than he thought. And there's more time to it than he thought, but he would still do a really good job on them. And I wasn't happy. I showed him the bid, read him the bid,
yeah,
and I wasn't happy about it. I backtracked the original agreement that I told him. I said, go ahead and do it for another $1,000. For another $1,000, I said, no. Now we're not talking to you all. We ain't doing that. So anyway, we had a nice conversation. It wasn't as negative as I'm making it out to be, really. We had a very nice conversation about it. And I left it at this. I said I was going to talk to you folks, and if anybody wanted to come over, we'd have to make an appointment. If anybody wanted to come over and see the windows that he has taken out, we could do that, or we could just agree upon what to do at this point. But he knows we got him over a bind because he signed an agreement. And I went and looked at that bid, and that's what it says. Do the windows for $500.
Right, and I'll just remind him and everyone that is in large part why we awarded him the bid, because of.
Oh yeah, he knows that.
Said he would do them for. So.
Also, Dave, he had 2 opportunities to look at those windows, inside and out. He chose to take the windows out. I after the whole discussion, right. Gwen and Guy and I talked about it in town office days after, and I think Gwen and Guy were more inclined to forgive him. He made a mistake and all this other stuff, and maybe I am too, but I want to hear what everybody else has to say. I'm really upset about it because, hell, you know where I'm at. I want to move forward. I don't want this BS going on. He signed a bid. He said he was going to fix the windows for a certain price, but
right. So let's just.
We have to be cautious.
Yeah. All right. Let's
because we want. Wait a minute, just a moment, Dave. We want the windows done right, one, and two, and he says he would anyway, even if we didn't go along with this, what he wants. Yeah, says it. But two, we have to keep in mind also that the outside of those windows are lead paint. I don't believe the insides are. But he did, so those are two things we have to consider. And he did choose, to take the windows out. No one told him to do it, but he wanted to do it that way. So now he's finding more work as a result of it, and he's telling us we'd have to do it anyway. And the paint on the inside, I looked at it myself, guys, and the paint on the inside, yes, is excessive. It was painted over many, many times over the years. So he'd have to scrape them down. It's another hour or two of work, and now he's woofing on the price. So, and he had to take the latch off and this and that, and he's showing me this. But before I'm done, I just want to say two things. Last. One, I want the windows done. We know that. But two, it was a marvelous opportunity having those windows out to see that freaking wood. That wood is gorgeous. According to my mom, it was 200 years old. I don't know if that's accurate, but to look at that wood and the condition.
Sorry,
anyway, that's my spiel. And I want to hear everybody else's take about what they think we should do, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so let's give everybody a chance. So I'm going to start by myself and saying we put it out to bid. He looked at all the windows. He gave us a bid for a certain price. I expect him to do the work for that price. I'm not interested in considering paying him anything other than the price that he said he would do the work for, because we might want to decide to give the work to somebody else instead. So that's my opinion. Gwen, what's your opinion of the situation?
A bid is a bid.
What did she say? I can't hear her.
A bid is a bid, she said. That, he bid a price, so that's the price that he's got to live with. Joseph, what's your feeling?
Yeah, I agree. This is he signed a contract with us, and this is not a bid for some homework. This is a municipal bid, and I think that he needs to honor that just as much as we do.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well said. Shelby, what's your view?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially because I think I as somebody who wasn't as for the windows, as others, I think that the price we got the bid for was one that we were all comfortable with, and there's a reason that we accepted that bid, and we should stick by it.
Okay, Bruce, is that?
Okay, I got my marching orders. I'll tell him that we have to stick to the bid. Excuse me. I just hope he does a good job, because you know what happens when there's a disgruntled person doing the work, but it was his error. He knows it. He's accepted it. He knows that he didn't put in the bid. Well, he says this. Well, usually that means when I put a bid out for painting, it means exterior. I said, Norm, look at the bid. The bid says do the windows, not inside or outside. He said, well, maybe I wrote it down wrong. Hey, man, you had two opportunities to look at the building. You wrote it up wrong. I mean, you didn't state that isn't the way you wanted to do it. You just went ahead and gave a price, and if I remember right, the price was first $5,000, and then he had jacked it up to $5,500.
I hate to interject here, but I don't think that we need to continue to hash it out. I know that Norm is a professional guy, and after you tell him what we've discussed here, I know he'll do an excellent job on the work. So I don't think there's any reason to keep going back and forth about what he said.
Okay, I hope so. That's all I could say. And I'll be watching, but the bottom line is we pay him when the work's done. So we had, what do you want to call it, first refusal if he doesn't do a good job. So he promised me he would. I just don't want to see any corners cut, or I'm gonna go freaking nuts.
Right. Okay. Anything else on the building, Bruce? We gotta.
No, I don't think so. Let me see. Let me think for a second. No, I think the only other thing I'm going to throw in is, as this is all getting done, that at some point I might get Dave Zalesko in to fix those windows to make sure they operate correctly. I'm talking about the weights and the ropes to make sure that they're 100%, so our renters, our lessees can use the windows properly, and we don't have issues down the road. Since they're out now, and when they're going back in, because you put trim right back over those stops, and I want to make sure that everything's working fine before we close everything up.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Moving on to summary update, Mr. Tanza, what's going on?
Another election, we have a re-election for the school budget for the grammar school portion of the budget, which failed by 3 votes last week. So that'll be on June 30th, same scenario. We'll do it here. We'll have to wear a face mask and hand sanitizer. Then at the end of the evening, we will bring them over to Leland and Gray, where we will commingle them and count them. Only in this vote, there'll only be 4 towns rather than 5 towns. Wyndham isn't part of this. So hopefully we'll get it passed and we'll move right along. Other than that, things are running good. Gwen's doing the files, the books, copying those into Nemrick, and everything seems to be okay.
I am able to be here that night to.
I just would like 2 people,
count out.
just so that
Right.
it's just not Gwen and
Right.
I, because.
Yep. Shelby, are you able to be here again also?
What's the night again?
June 30th, Tuesday, June 30th.
At the very most.
Yeah, I don't see why not. That should be fine.
Okay. All right. So we'll both be here. And so.
Thank you.
It'll be a lot
Thank you.
easier. We only have 1 page.
Yeah, one question, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to highways and roads, Mr. Bills. What's going on?
Yeah, basically since I've seen you guys last, I'm still working on the final rating of the, things that dried out, and I'm still just scraping and working with the getting roads chloride. So that's basically all since I talked to you last. Everything else is, the grass is growing, and we'll be mowing in another 3 weeks. So I know it's gonna be up there, but our schedule is 2nd week of July. So that's all I have for you tonight.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, moving on to communications. The only email that I thought was particularly of note for us that Guy had forwarded along the tax rate notice dates for fiscal year 21. Just for us all to be aware of the fact that obviously because of delays or extensions for some things, we're ultimately going to need to push back due dates for the first, due date for the first
We're still
quarter.
shooting for August 15th.
Oh, yeah.
As the date for the first quarter.
Okay. So even though people have, even though they're not going to get homestead stuff
Right,
until,
exactly.
so it just may result
The federal's
in.
been pushed up to July 15th, so
Right.
the tax department, Vermont tax department is going to be somewhat a little behind. But we've done that before, where we made adjusted tax bills in the next quarter. So I think right now I'm optimistic. I think we'll
Okay,
have
great.
a August 15th tax notice.
Okay, that would be great. And then regular mail, only 2 things. There's a postcard about solar savings from Green Lantern Solar. And then we've also received, which I will be signing, the renewal of our contract with the Windham County Humane Society, who you'll remember we designated as our pound keeper And as the situation with the Papoose Lane dogs shows how incredibly valuable it is for us to have them as a partner in this whole situation. So our annual contract with them expires June 30th, and this is just a renewal contract. So I'll be signing that so we can send that back to them. That's the only other regular mail. Then we're moving on to the pay orders. So Guy emailed just before the meeting a scan of the payroll warrant, which I signed last week. Sarah didn't send it out with the other one, so I asked Guy to scan it and send it out. I guess before we do that, we'll do our same little thing. Gwen, have you reviewed the payroll warrant, and do you have any questions about it? Okay. Joseph, have you reviewed the payroll warrant, and do you have any questions about it?
I have, I do not.
Okay. Shelby, have you reviewed the payroll warrant, and do you have any questions about it?
Yep, and no questions.
Bruce, have you reviewed the payroll warrant, and do you have any questions about it?
When did it get sent out? The only one I saw was the pay order.
It got sent out 10 minutes before 6:15 by Guy.
Oh, well, I didn't see it. So I'll just have to abstain. As far as the pay orders go, I saw that, and I'm good with that. There wasn't that much on it other than school and some other stuff to Thomas Bloom and well, anyway, you're not talking about that anyway. I didn't see the payroll.
Okay, yeah, it just got sent out right before the meeting. Then I would suggest that you just abstain from it when we do it.
I am.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve payroll warrant 2020-46 dated June 10th, 2020 in the amount of $1,196.53. Is there a second?
Hello?
He's not.
I'll second.
Seconded by Shelby. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving payroll warrant 2020-46 dated June 10th, 2020 in the amount of $1,196.53 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Me.
One abstention. Bruce abstains. All right, that is approved. Now we'll move on to the payroll, the accounts payable warrant. I'll do the same thing, go around. Gwen, have you reviewed the accounts payable warrant, and do you have any questions?
Yes, I reviewed, no question.
Joseph, have you reviewed the accounts payable warrant, and do you have any questions?
Yes, I have. No, I do not.
Shelby, have you reviewed the accounts payable warrant, and do you have any questions?
Yep. And I just have a quick question. Does anyone use the ball field?
Good point.
I mean, I'm genuinely,
I'm not sure.
not that it's a humongous expense, but
Right. Does anybody use them?
Once in a great while, there's a makeup game, but not as a rule. This year, I think probably less use because of the virus situation. But during the summer, I've seen it used quite a bit last year.
and just like random people, not like, I mean, there's not like we don't have a school, there's no school or league or team or anyone locally that like uses it for something specific.
As a matter of fact, Peter Meyer last weekend
Yeah.
used
A brush hog. He was doing a bunch of
opened
work
it
on
up wide, so it looks
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, he's great.
Okay, Bruce, have you reviewed the accounts payable warrant, and do you have any questions?
Yes, I did. No, I don't.
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable warrant 2020-51 dated June 17th, 2020 in the amount of $230,141.62. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Gwen. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving accounts payable warrant 2020-51 dated June 17th, 2020 in the amount of $230,141.62 $141.62, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, both pay warrants are approved, which just brings us down to setting the agenda for the next meeting, which will actually be July 1st. There's a typo in my agenda. It's July 1st, not June 17th. I have on there that we'll review and hopefully approve paving and grinding RFPs. We'll continue the discussion of road projects. Gwen, do you have other suggestions for agenda items? Joseph, do you have other suggestions for agenda items?
No.
Shelby, any additional suggestions for agenda items?
Yeah, I'd like to put discussing the survey on. I did get a handful of responses, like six, seven, I think. And my thought is that if we knew it was going to be on the agenda for the next meeting, I would send out a reminder for anyone who is thinking about responding, and indicate that we'd be discussing it at that meeting if anyone wanted to call in.
Okay, so yeah, we'll put that on. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Bruce, any suggestions for agenda items?
So we're gonna do the RFP for Hill Road.
Yeah.
Was that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And are we gonna table the discussion about the cutting down the knob near Cynthia?
I think
Are we gonna talk about that later? Where do we leave it? I'm a little out of the loop there.
We discussed it and have uniformly decided that we're not going to discuss that further now.
Okay.
That we're just going to move forward with paving grinding RFPs for Hill Road without the removal of the material part.
Okay. All righty.
All right.
How does Archie feel about it? Is he there?
He's walked out of the room, but I don't think he had any issue with that.
Okay.
Okay. So
thank you.
Sure. All right, then I'd make a motion that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Wait a minute. Put SLP on there too.
Yeah,
David.
I was going to.
Okay.
Sorry, is there a second on adjourning?
I'll second it.
Second.
Beat you to it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, yeah, because you didn't speak. I'll give it to Bruce, I guess.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 8:08.
1 hour, 37 minutes. Do we have access to?
You're only 2 minutes off of my goal.